Welcome to today's webinar on the Precision Medicine Solution, where we explore how genomic screening lab Aon found an end-to-end automation solution that sped up its diagnostic output while lowering costs, and how you can build on Aon's experience to accelerate your path to success. I'm Laura Hudson, a technology journalist and moderator for today's discussion. Our panelists are Sean Desai, Chief Technology Officer at Aon Global Health, the fastest growing clinical lab and healthcare services organization in the United States. Ramon Feliciano, Chief Technology Officer at QIAGEN, an innovator in sample to insight solutions. And Christina Kermanshachi, Global Director of Life Sciences at Intel, which has partnered with QIAGEN to create market-leading high-volume genome analysis. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. So, Sean, I'd like to start with you. We want to spend some time telling the story of Aon. Talk to us a little bit about the history and growth of Aon and how your diagnostic needs have changed over the years, from your first use of a precision medicine solution to the present day.
Great. Well, first, thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone on the call. And thank you. It's an honor for Aon to be a part of this conversation, to be included with such great companies such as QIAGEN and Intel. So we're, again, very, very humbled and honored to be on this call. So Aon Global Health was started in 2011. We are located in a 30,000 square foot facility about an hour north of Atlanta in Gainesville, Georgia. We started off small as a toxicology laboratory, accepting samples from doctors all over the country, where we did drug testing for pain management clinics and the like. But after that, we soon ramped up and moved into our larger facility, which I just mentioned. And we also saw a lot of other opportunities out there that our clients wanted. A lot of physicians are really into the genetics and precision medicine that you mentioned. So we started off in an area called pharmacogenetics, which we then quickly moved into another region called hereditary cancer screening. And that's going to be more applicable, that is exactly applicable to what we are talking about today. With hereditary cancer screening, what you are actually doing is you're going to be sequencing different genes from a patient that are involved in determining whether they have a likelihood of developing certain types of cancers in the future. As an example, I'll give you a news story from something that's been in the popular press from the actress Angelina Jolie. She had a family history of breast cancer, so she received a hereditary cancer screening test and then found out that she had particular mutations that made it more likely she would develop breast cancer in the future. So she had a double mastectomy to alleviate that development of breast cancer in the future. So this is something we wanted to do really starting beginning of 2013. Now, in 2013, in the beginning, we could not accomplish this type of testing because there was patents on two major hereditary cancer marker genes, the actual sequence of those, the BRCA1 and 2 genes involved in most commonly breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So it wasn't until about September 2013 when the Supreme Court ruled, Supreme Court of the U.S. ruled that a particular patent just covering the sequence identity for hereditary cancer screening or the like was invalid. At that point, our laboratory was allowed to then get into this space. We wanted to. We were very excited about it. It's something that a lot of people want to have done for themselves to determine their risk of developing certain types of cancers. So we started, investigating and looking to get into this. Now, there was a problem, though. First, the sequencing technology needed to sequence the genes at a lower cost and at a rapid rate was not quite there yet in the end of 2013. Second, there was not really a very good bioinformatics solution that would allow us to process the data without hiring teams of people, which I'll get into here in a second. But by the beginning of 2015, there was a ability to sequence large number of genes using what they call next-generation sequencing at a relatively inexpensive rate compared to what it was in the past. And then also there was a bioinformatics solution that we first started with, which was not the QIAGEN Intel solution to begin with, which we then switched to later on. So those pieces together allowed us to enter into the field of doing hereditary cancer screening. We actually accept samples currently from all over the country. We accept samples from saliva, and we extract DNA, and then we do sequencing, and then we process it through the QIAGEN Intel platform, which we'll discuss here at length, to give a very, very nice report to our physician clients who are very happy. So we're excited, and we're excited to be on this call.
So Sean, when Aon first decided to expand into this sort of next generation testing, what problems did you want to solve? What opportunities did you want to pursue? And what sort of challenges did you encounter?
The main problem we had was just the ability to have all the components necessary to do the type of testing and then release the results accurately to our physician clients so that they could help treat their patients. So we had a lot of opportunity. As you know, there are about 10,000 Medicare enrollees or people becoming eligible for Medicare every day in the United States. Medicare does cover this test and reimburses it. So there's a very, very large demand for patients who want to get this type of testing done. So that was a very, very large opportunity that we were trying to pursue across the country. The challenge was, we had to find vendors and equipment that we were comfortable with. So as a medical reference lab, we are very competent at doing the type of wet lab work you would commonly think of it as a lab. In this particular case, it would be, sample preparation to extract DNA from saliva, creating next-generation sequencing libraries using robotics, actually sequencing the data through next-generation sequencers, which is all highly complex, but that's in our wheelhouse. The thing that we do not do well, or not that we couldn't, but the thing that we don't do is bioinformatics. So the next-generation sequencers produce massive amounts of data that we could either hire a team of people here to then look through the data and determine whether the patient had genetic mutations that incline them to developing cancer in the future, or we could use some bioinformatics platform, which we had to go with that. We had to implement a bioinformatics solution that allowed us to more easily go through this data to then report it out to our physician clients.
So tell me a little bit more about that decision. Why not go it alone? What prevented you from developing your own precision medicine solution?
We figured it would probably take at least 10 people to hire on to do this bioinformatics analysis. We are a mid-sized reference laboratory. We're not the largest in the country, but even a large reference laboratory would have a hard time hiring 10 full-time people. Now that would just be the start of it. What these 10 full-time people, at least in our estimate, would need to do is then start going through all of the databases out there that actually look at different gene calls and all the published literature as to what different mutations mean as far as likelihoods of developing hereditary cancer, and make a database that they curate. And then the bioinformatics specialists would then need to keep updating and curating this database. Now, let's say we did this. We hired them on and then allowed them to gather this database together to figure out, how to process the cancer data that we were sequencing. It would take a large period of time for them to actually develop this database. So hiring them, they would have to be working basically, we figure, several months to develop this database, and then we could start our testing. We did not have that luxury of time. We did not have the luxury of hiring multiple people, a team, and then allowing them to develop this database over a large period of time without actually getting into the testing. because of the laboratory, to keep our lights on, we needed to implement this testing quickly and effectively so that we could then start marketing to our physician clients across the United States, which we could then perform the service for them and get reimbursed from insurance or payment from the patient. So time was a huge consideration, and cost is one of the reasons we didn't want to go it alone as far as our bioinformatics solution.
So what sort of problems did the QIAGEN Intel solution solve, or what did it allow your teams to do that they couldn't have done otherwise?
Yes. Now, QIAGEN, Intel, both phenomenal companies. I go back to my days in graduate school. I was in the chemistry department down in Atlanta at Emory University. And we used the QIAGEN blue box kits to extract DNA and purify all sorts of different things. So QIAGEN is very well known in life sciences. Intel, phenomenal company. Everybody knows them. So when we found out they had partnered, I mean, that just gives us a lot of confidence that whatever product they're going to produce is going to be the best in class. So when QIAGEN and Intel came in, we were actually able to process our genomic our sequencing data in a much thorough and accurate manner. We had a previous solution in before QIAGEN Intel, but QIAGEN Intel has allowed us to do things more rapidly and also allows our clinical geneticists here to review the reports in a very, very seamless fashion.
So what sort of results did you see after implementing QIAGEN QCI? How many tests were you able to process, and how much did the system save in terms of your bottom line?
Now, the amount of tests we were able to process is currently, with one clinical geneticist, we can do up to 50 per day just off of the one person. So it's pretty easy to scale up beyond that with adding new geneticists who can review the information off the QCI platform. System saved, I'd say that is a very, very large number, because imagine how much we would have had to pay teams of bioinformatics specialists to do this, whereas now we are paying QIAGEN. I view it as a very reasonable fee to do the analysis on the reports for us. So it's a tremendous savings. And the other thing that you're saving is time. We're able to do the report generation and review in a very quick manner to get it turned out to our physicians, which saves you a lot of time, which, from what my old advisor used to say, time is your most valuable possession.
Were there other performance increases that you saw as well?
Yes. As I mentioned, we had a previous bioinformatics solution prior to the QIAGEN Intel solution. We saw about a 30 to 50% increase in turnaround time for using this particular solution. So, for example, if we could do 25 samples per day with one clinical geneticist in our previous solution, the QIAGEN QCI solution allows us to do 50. So we have a very, very large increase that way. So we're very happy, and that allows us to turn the reports around in maybe a day quicker, which is important to our physician clients because they want to treat their patients the best of their ability.
So, Christina, I'd like to get your perspective here as well. What role does Intel's technology play in enabling these dramatic improvements in performance?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say what a real privilege it is to be here with Sean and Ramon. Intel has worked with QIAGEN since 2006. One of the first things that really impressed me about the company was that they're staffed with professional scientists and professional technologists. So one of the advantages you have working with commercial software, such as QIAGEN Bioinformatics, they can write the software from the ground up using the latest code modernization techniques. What you have there is very high accuracy and extreme scalability. That's one of the things that we've been working with QIAGEN over the years. In addition to ensuring their very efficient software, we've worked with QIAGEN and all of the different OEMs to develop a balanced yet scalable HPC cluster design that supports that hand in hand. So QIAGEN's really well known for their ease of use and their highly reproducible analytics pipelines. But it was just as important to marry that with a scalable cluster design that was easy for someone like Sean to deploy and manage at very low cost of ownership. And one of the things we've really learned over the years is that the system level optimization is key here. Delivering reliable and balanced throughput both for production pipelines. So for a commercial lab like Sean's, when you're trying to produce many samples at once as efficiently as possible, but also for low latency pipelines under stack conditions. So when you need to return an individual patient results as quickly as possible. And typically commercial labs need to support both. And really it's that combination of the scalable cluster architecture that we've developed in combination with the fantastic QIAGEN bioinformatics software.
So Ramon, from the perspective of QIAGEN, what sort of impact does this have for people who are working in clinical diagnostics in terms of analysis, interpretation, and reporting time?
Well, Laura, I think that when you bring all of these technical capabilities together, it can have a tremendous impact on the daily operations of a clinical lab like AON and the professionals that are working hard to turn results around quickly and get back to physicians and the patients they're treating. The workflow and the solution that we've put together means that these professionals now have easy access to a system that provides all the components across analysis, interpretation, and reporting, as you said, and that allows them to deliver results quickly and accurately at high scale. And that's because we really brought together three important components as part of this solution. The first is QIAGEN's Ingenuity Knowledge Base, which is the largest commercially available expert-created knowledge base of cancer and hereditary disease knowledge, which is basically captures everything that we know about disease genetics, both for hereditary cancers like the ones that AON is looking at, but other diseases as well. We essentially do the upfront work of pulling all that information together. We then have the QCI tool that Sean mentioned, which stands for QIAGEN Clinical Insight, which is a bioinformatics product line that uses powerful AI algorithms to intelligently match a particular patient's genetic profile against this vast knowledge base of disease information. So we pick out the most relevant and accurate and up-to-date information that is tailored to this particular patient. And then we do that quickly and at scale thanks to taking advantage of Intel's powerful computing architectures, including their scalable systems framework that allows us to leverage high-performance computing technologies to deliver fast turnaround time and at scale. We're really excited to be able to bring these together in an easy-to-use solution that allows labs to get up and running in a matter of months with the confidence that they will be able to turn tests around quickly, deliver reports that are high quality and comprehensive, and that this solution will scale with their business as their testing volume grows to serve higher and higher numbers of patients.
So let's talk about the future for a moment. So Sean, now that AON has the QIAGEN Intel solution at its disposal, and you're able to do next generation testing with this kind of speed and accuracy, what's next? How would you plan to expand your clinical genomic services?
Yes, one of the things we are currently working on is the addition of cystic fibrosis carrier screening. This type of testing is a genetic test, and it tells you whether, it typically be for parents before they had children. They'd want to find out if one or both of the parents have this particular cystic fibrosis gene, which if a patient has 2 copies, which would be, or if a person has 2 copies, typically one from mom and one from dad, is how it would occur. Then that patient would have full-blown cystic fibrosis. So a lot of people want to do this type of testing prior to conceiving with children, just to know if they have a risk of giving cystic fibrosis to their offspring. Second is something that has really progressed over the last probably 3-4 years, is actual sequencing of tumorous tissues themselves and the DNA contained within them. Everything I had mentioned before was hereditary cancer screening. The hereditary genomic information is the information that's contained within all of your cells, your normal cells in your body. Now, for cancer, actual cancerous samples, those samples contain typically mutated genomes that have present different things. So by sequencing the genes contained in an actual cancerous sample, you can sometimes figure out what exact type of cancer it is. Then also there are therapies that you can use that may halt the spread of that cancer to a greater extent than other therapies. So more personalized medicine in that regard. So that would be the sequencing of the actual tumor itself that we're looking at moving into, and we would get those samples from pathologists and places such as that, so for our actual test. So those are two very exciting areas, and we imagine that we know the QIAGEN Intel solution would be able to handle it.
So Ramon, we've heard a lot about what the QIAGEN Intel solution has done for AON and their work in DNA cancer screening. What can it do for companies that focus on other aspects of precision medicine?
That's a good question. One of the things that differentiates the QIAGEN Intel solution is that it is what we call a universal solution, in that it is designed and has been architected from the start to work for any disease and any indication. The QIAGEN Clinical Insight platform has been successfully applied to hereditary cancer, as we heard from Sean, but also to solid tumors and somatic cancers, to blood cancers, leukemia and lymphoma, as well as hereditary disorders, cardiovascular, carrier screening, and whole genome clinical sequencing. If you think about the example that Sean mentioned about potentially needing to hire a dozen people in order to build out the capabilities required to analyze, interpret, and report on even just a single hereditary cancer screening test, then as a lab decides to move into new disease areas, launch new tests against new indications, those teams need to be spun up again, because those tests are testing different parts of the genome, they're testing different genes, and in order to make sense of these new tests, you need to learn about the biology that they are measuring. Customers tell us repeatedly that clinical utility, the extent to which a test can produce a useful insight for a patient case that is accurate, that's relevant, and that is understandable to a physician, is the most important buying characteristic in selecting a precision medicine solution. And making sense of this data is a real challenge for labs because we continue to learn more about disease genetics. Our clinical knowledge is doubling every 18 months or so. And so labs that want to meet their quality standards and responsibly report out comprehensively and accurately on these clinical test results have to stay abreast of the latest understanding of disease genetics for cystic fibrosis, for solid tumor tissues, for hereditary screens, for all the different tests they want to launch. So because we've built this platform in a way that is universal and our knowledge base applies across all disease areas, we believe we can help labs like AON as they expand their test portfolio to offer a broader range of testing services across a broader range of diseases and indications.
So, Christina, what are your thoughts?
Well, Intel's goal is to make precision medicine ubiquitous, to make it the standard of care worldwide. And if you're going to do that, you really need to make it reproducible with high accuracy. You need to deliver comprehensive reporting to patients and clinicians. And you really have to reduce the cost and translate those expertise into clinical practice. Continually incorporating the latest curated scientific discoveries and applying the approved clinical guidelines, as Ramon has outlined. So the combination of QIAGEN QCI and Intel Scalable System Framework and the technologies that Intel brings to the picture, we're respectively continually making investments. We understand the business challenges faced by commercial labs like Sean's, and we're creating a set of solutions which directly address and overcome those barriers to adoption, namely system complexity and the pace of change, scale and volume of information, and distilling the latest expertise and best practices across bioinformatics, analytics, and high-performance computing. We did an earlier TCO analysis with QIAGEN, and not only could the QIAGEN Intel solution keep pace with the latest high-throughput sequencers, but you'd be able to process a whole genome sequence as low as $22, the analytics portion. So in some ways, I feel like the industry is really holding ourselves back. We're struggling with reproducibility. We're struggling to keep pace with the output of high throughput instruments. Maybe we're struggling to keep abreast of the latest scientific discoveries, which are truly phenomenal right now. I think we're at an incredible inflection point in the industry. But if you think about it, institutions are coming to terms with how to do panels, and that's the natural place to start. But then moving from there to incorporate whole exome and then whole genome sequencing. But if we can get whole genome sequencing down to that level of cost, $22 per sample, and we can deliver high accuracy and reproducibility, there's really no reason why you wouldn't be able to deploy that broadly throughout the healthcare system.
So, after having gone through this process, Sean, what would be your advice to other companies that are interested in precision medicine and DNA screening? What should they be looking for in a precision medicine solution?
My advice would be first to take a very strong look at the QIAGEN Intel solution for processing your bioinformatic data and your genetic sequencing data. You need a very strong partner that, as Ramon was saying, has such a huge curation of databases that they've compiled so that you can be sure when you produce a large quantity of sequencing data, let's say in our case hereditary cancer screening, that you're able to know once it's put through a solution, a software solution, that it will pick out clinically actionable mutations or changes. So very, very important. You need somebody you can rely on, that you can be assured of the accuracy of the reporting out of the data that the lab is producing. Second, speed. The QIAGEN Intel solution is very fast compared to things that we had others that we had looked at and implemented. Third, I would say cost. QIAGEN Intel is very cost effective for our laboratory. And I'm going to mention a fourth one. The QIAGEN Intel solution, we had a wonderful time, and we still do, with the representatives that have made it very easy to work with them and implement the solution. And then also, we've created a very nice, customized, very simple to read report that's very, very fast for a physician to read, so that they can see whether that patient has a potentially cancer-causing mutation from their history, their hereditary history. So all those things combined are what I would give as advice as to what to look at before implementing a precision medicine solution.
So Ramon, can you speak a little about the cost effectiveness of the QIAGEN Intel precision medicine solution? How does it impact the work that clinical geneticists and molecular pathologists can do?
Well, it really comes down to some of those criteria that Sean walked us through. The clinical geneticists and molecular pathologists who really are on the front lines of precision medicine, they're the ones who are looking at patient data and trying to understand what is going on genetically in this particular patient or this particular patient's tumor. And what can we tell this patient's doctor that is going to help that physician design a care or treatment plan for the patient. They care about getting those results out to that physician quickly and confidently. And our solution, by bringing together the capabilities from QIAGEN and from Intel, has been able to bring that time down to minutes instead of hours or days in hard cases, and allows these professionals, these clinical geneticists and molecular pathologists, to radically increase how many patients they, on an individual basis, can essentially serve. Sean mentioned being able to process 50 or more reports per day per person, which is an order of magnitude more than often folks can do without capabilities like this. And again, thanks to the way we've integrated our technologies, they can achieve that speed without sacrificing accuracy or clinical utility. You still get the same high-value report out that physicians want, that they are able to use, and that makes an impact on patients' lives.
So we're heading towards the end of our time. Before we move into the question and answer portion, I'd like to hear a final thought from each of you. Christina, let's start with you.
Well, thanks. So I mentioned before that really our goal is to make precision medicine ubiquitous. We work closely with a range of institutions around the world, from regional healthcare facilities to commercial labs, pharmaceutical companies, to even helping to design a number of the national genomics programs. And one of the things that we've learned over the course of many years in doing that is we needed to develop a cluster sizing program, which essentially removes the ambiguity from your infrastructure growth plans and helps you anticipate the growth of your compute infrastructure based on your institution's throughput goals. So if we know how many panels or how many exomes or genomes you want to process per year or per day, we can help identify how you're going to grow to support those goals. And what this means is you can confidently make investments today, knowing that with partners like QIAGEN and Intel, you'll be able to successfully scale your clinical genomics practice in the years to come. When I work with QIAGEN customers like Aon, and they tell me firsthand that they can deploy QIAGEN bioinformatics in 3 months instead of more than a year, and the shift in staffing of very scarce expertise, and to focus really on their core business benefits, that really tells me that this is a solution that can surpass the challenges over the years. This really makes precision medicine a reality today and not 5 or 10 years from now.
Sean, what are your thoughts?
I'd like to add a human face onto what we're talking about here today. There's reports that up to 70% of all medical treatments are based on a diagnostic laboratory test. So we're talking about the testing that a company like Aon performs with the excellent partnership of QIAGEN and Intel. So we actually are working with real people samples that are sent to us by their physician, and these patients want to know whether they, in this particular case, want to know whether they have a risk of developing a cancer in the future. That's a very, very important thing, and we take it very seriously here at Aon. So when this sample comes in, we treat it very, very carefully, all through the way up to reporting out the final result. Because when this result goes out to the patient's doctor, it may say that this patient has a high likelihood of developing, let's say, ovarian cancer, or breast cancer, or colon cancer. These are all very, sensitive things for patients to see in their report. So what we do here is very important, and it affects the care of numerous people, numerous patients from across the country that get their samples sent to Aon for testing. So what we're talking about here today is extremely important in a healthcare perspective to multiple parties, and I'm just thankful that we are all able to sit down and discuss this very, very fundamental type of reporting that we do here.
Ramon, how about you? Do you have any closing thoughts?
I actually think Christina and Sean did a great job there. I guess, taking a step back, I just think that we are fortunate to be able to contribute to how healthcare is now really starting to take advantage of the milestone of sequencing the human genome some 20 years ago. It's taken roughly 20 years, but we've gotten to the point now where the technologies have matured, the costs have come down, we understand how to make sense of the data, how to analyze it. We've got computing technologies that can do that in time frames that work from a healthcare standpoint. And we really are now seeing the democratization of personalized medicine to make them available. They are now within reach of hospital networks, of community cancer centers, and even private clinical practices. As Christina mentioned, hearing that a lab like Aon can spin up a capability like this in a matter of a few months rather than years and at a fraction of the cost, that's one of those market dynamic shifts that says we are about to head into a period where this technology really will be available to all patients. And from a scientific standpoint, we've really still just scratched the surface on how the genome is going to be able to be applied for clinical use. We're seeing it in risk screening and stratification for cancers, but as Sean mentioned, increasingly we're looking at solid tumors as well to guide treatment selection and potentially clinical trial enrollment, to accelerate diagnoses for rare disorders. And as our compute infrastructure continues to improve our ability to process this data, I think Christina is absolutely right that we will start to see broader applications of whole exome and whole genome sequencing for routine clinical practice. It's a very exciting time to be in this industry and to be able to contribute to improving healthcare, not just in the United States, but globally as we make these technologies and capabilities more broadly available.
So at this time, we're going to move into the question and answer portion, and our audience is invited to ask any questions they might have for the panel via the chat function. To get us started, I have a question for you again, Ramon. You'd mentioned the breadth of variant coverage in QIAGEN QCI. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but essentially what this comes down to is the fact that these tests at their core are measuring some part of a patient's genome, either their hereditary genome or, in the case of the solid tumors, the genome of the cancer itself, including its mutations. And that means you are focusing on a section of the genome. Maybe it's just one gene initially, but eventually it'll be several genes and larger and larger sections of the genome. And as you do those measurements, you are going to pull out thousands, tens of thousands, and eventually hundreds of thousands of variants that may have a clinical impact. And so for a solution like the QIAGEN Intel solution to be able to scale up to those more sophisticated, more complex NGS tests means that the system needs to know about a greater and greater breadth of genomic variation that can be measured. QIAGEN has been building the Ingenuity knowledge base for 20 years now. There are over 4,000 expert person years that have gone into constructing and maintaining the knowledge base. And it is because of that existing and ongoing investment that we can take high-performing AI algorithms coupled with Intel's computing architectures and match up a broader and broader range of a patient's genome against what we know about that disease area and get to a useful result. And that saves orders of magnitude of time for a lab that is trying to turn one of these reports around quickly and confidently while knowing that they have thoroughly analyzed a patient's genetic profile.
So Sean, I have a question for you about your experiences at Aon. What sort of feedback have you gotten from your employees after implementing this solution and this approach?
Our employees very much love this. The QIAGEN has made QIAGEN Intel have made a very seamless and easy to use platform such that our clinical geneticists can review results in a very fast but thorough manner. That they absolutely love it. And from hearing Ramon, you hear how much work went into the back end to make this solution so seamless. So I appreciate all of the work that QIAGEN and Intel have done so that, you know, a laboratory such as ourselves has the benefit of having a nice user experience. I only hear good things from our employees about this.
So, Christina, tell us a little bit more about how Intel's technology can help companies prepare for the ever-increasing demands of data processing in precision medicine.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things we've learned over the years, working closely with both life science and clinical institutions, we were seeing lots of different departments wanting to invest in what we call purpose-built appliances. You can imagine, you know, each hospital or commercial lab or each department setting up their own, you know, mini compute cluster, if you will. It quickly becomes an unsustainable business practice. Over the years, we've incorporated just a number of key learnings into Intel Scalable System Framework and combined that with the latest software optimizations, working closely with QIAGEN. One of the things that we've been seeing is we see the convergence of commercial labs and genomics analytics in areas like medical imaging and digital pathology. And so now, each of those areas alone face huge challenges with keeping pace with the high throughput instruments and overwhelming storage demands, and diversity of workloads. All of this requires a high degree of scarce expertise, both scientific and technological. So Intel's making investments in the latest analytics algorithms, a range of exciting accelerator technologies, advanced memory and storage, encryption and compression. We make the investments so that you can focus on your core areas of expertise and develop competitive differentiation and deliver improved patient care at significantly reduced costs.
So we've reached the end of our time together today. Ramon, Sean, Christina, thank you all very much for your time today and for sharing your expertise. For more information, our audience can visit reuters.com/Kaijin-Intel. Thank you.